The rapid economic, social, and technological changes in the world, people are more interconnected and interdependent. The world our students will live and work in is much different from the world their parents and teachers grew up. The prospect of climate instability, the globalization of economies, and the digital revolution will be concerns of these students. Learning in the 21st century skills will encompass the communication, the collaboration of these students. I am joined by my field guide educator, and she has a few responses about communication and collaboration.
Hi there. This is the question about communication in the classroom. So yes, we assess communication skills for foreign languages in the classroom. The first thing that you generally do as a foreign language teacher is assess the written format. So what we do is we ask questions of students, usually beginning with a recognition of vocabulary. So we'll have activities for them like multiple choice, matching, fill in the blank, maybe crosswords or word searches, something fun where they can recognize the words in the written form. We also assess greater knowledge, higher depth of knowledge later on in the year where they have to respond in short sentences. This is usually to a prompt, such as a dialogue prompt, and they can use this in other formats too once they've finished writing it. Like they can listen to each other speaking and they can practice their own speaking as well. We also have them write out their own dialogue, so that's something that could take care of all four aspects. It's really fun. It's a creative activity where they get to basically create their own little skits working with vocabulary. So they write out their scripts, they read what they've written, they practice speaking, pronunciation, and they also listen to what the other person is saying so that they know when their cues are. So this is a very good four-way communication activity, just for one example. In the foreign language classroom, there are many opportunities to work collaboratively. Like I mentioned with the communication activity, writing out a dialogue where you and your partner get to speak together and perform, this is a great activity to collaborate. And you might wonder, how do you actually collaborate in a virtual setting? Well, the best and easiest way to do practice is we work with the program Blackboard Collaborate. Open up the program, allow students to go into their own individual private breakout rooms that nobody else has access to, and just let them work together on the whiteboard. They can do text, they can talk to each other on the microphone, they can chat with each other, and basically prepare what it is they'd like to present. You can do this during classroom time, or I've had instances where I come in as a moderator and allow two different or even more big groups to come in and work on a project together in Blackboard. All I have to do is the instructor set up a time. So that's a very good example of how you might do some collaboration in the foreign language virtual classroom. There are other instances where we do this together with pieces of projects. You can have students submitting to each other via email. You can also have students doing Skype. At the beginning of the 2015-2016 school year, our students were using Skype, and you could actually have students back and forth with each other without my moderation. This is something that you kind of have to watch out for, though, in a K-12 setting, because students sometimes abuse this privilege if there's no moderator present, and we eventually had to eliminate Skype from the students' scope of what they could use. But that doesn't mean that other things aren't available to them. We can use Google Hangouts. You do need a moderator for that in the K-12 setting at Agora, but that doesn't mean that they're not able to talk to each other and to type to each other like they would in Skype.
Why is global competence essential for today's youth? A broad range of forces are transforming the global landscape, requiring these new capacities and dispositions. There's the flattened global economy and changing demands of work, migration and immigration, creating more culturally and linguistically diverse cultures, and climate instability and the need for growing for global environmental stewardship. The rationale of global competence also rests on the values of studying the world and how it works as a mean of engaging our students deeply in learning. World cultures, transitional systems, global issues, they provide the relevance of today's world that grabs and holds our students' interest. Developing global competence can thus be a critical outcome of learning and a pathway for achieving foundational, disciplinary, and interdisciplinary knowledge and skills, pretty much what we see articulated in the Common Core curriculum. Previously, I mentioned climate instability and environmental stewardship. Over the last few decades, the Earth has experienced a growing frequency of extreme weather conditions and overall rising temperatures. Scientists around the world predict the prospect of further climate change is high. If greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere continues to rise, the consequences will be alarming and adaptation difficult. Global warming is too narrow a term to describe a phenomenon that is shaping life on this planet and affecting the Earth's climate, its chemistry, and biology. Rachel joins us again to discuss about critical thinking, another one of those 21st century skills used and integrated into the online classroom of foreign languages.
You might think that it's difficult at a lower level of foreign language classroom in a virtual environment to teach critical thinking and upper level skills. Basically, it's something that you would do in any subject, but with foreign language, actually some of the work is done for us with the program that we've chosen for curriculum. It's called Middlebury Interactive Languages. It's incredibly difficult. The curriculum is rigorous, and we basically rely on their material for the tests. Sometimes we amend and make modifications, which is perfectly fine. And they have tests that encourage critical thinking in the reading and listening passages. So you practice your listening skills, and then you make inferences about what you've listened to and not simple regurgitation. So, for example, a passage might discuss a story about two people that have taken a vacation together, and you might make inferences about what somebody likes to do based on what they are actually doing. This might be a level 1 type of activity. Also, reading passages are the same. You read a passage, and then it's not simply asking you to find a fact and regurgitate it. It's asking you to do a little bit of inference and kind of work on your critical thinking while you're taking your test. Some students really have a hard time with this, and that kind of translates over from your initial home language, base language, and it's not necessarily a foreign language problem, but it's a problem that students need to work on in their own native languages before they can get good at it in a foreign language, which I don't want to go on a soapbox, but it's something that I don't think a lot of administrators understand very well, is that in foreign language you have to have a firm base in your native language, or there's very, very little chance of being successful in a foreign language. So, upper level thinking, critical thinking, it's always good to do literacy initiatives. It's always good to do numeracy initiatives, because it's not just about reading and writing, but it's also about working on your math and your science skills, whether you're in foreign language classroom, English classroom. Cross-curricular collaboration is something that benefits students, and they'll start to see how everything comes together, and they can use their brains to kind of, instead of compartmentalize the different subject materials, they can use them to get a greater worldview and make them more ready to participate in career paths that are globally minded. In the foreign language virtual classroom, there are some very cool opportunities for students to innovate. A lot of times this comes in project format. So sometimes when we want students to do a creative project, we give them options. One of the projects that I worked with my Spanish 3 students was for them to create children's books. They were able to pick the topic, the theme, and they were basically just given a rubric with some requirements. And I had students do not just different storylines, but had some really cool formats that they submitted. I think I talked earlier about Storybird, which is one that I didn't really have a lot of experience with, but one of my students submitted in this format, and it was a wonderful tool, and I highly recommend it for any instructors trying to do a writing project. You can also have students work in other formats, like PowerPoint is one of the normal go-tos, but I also had students do voice projects, which a student of mine was blind, and she decided that she wanted to do an offering for students with total, she did hers through voice recognition technology, which is what we're using right now. So she was speaking hers, and of course she needed a little bit of help with the corrections. She has somebody that helps her with her schoolwork, and basically works as kind of like an assistant to her when she needs to do corrections in the written form. One thing I really like about voice recognition technology in the foreign language classroom is that, there are 4 methods of communication, and anytime that you need to have something on paper, essentially she's getting those corrections with her voice and with her tutor, who can talk through all the corrections with her and explain why things need to be fixed or changed, and what the process is, even though she can't see what's happening. So it's really kind of an interesting bridge between 2 different means of communication, the speaking and the writing. We've had lots of other projects too that involve innovative technology. We've had students do work in Articulate, which it's good for presentations. You can do kind of like a combination of PowerPoint and video. I'm sure that some of you are familiar with that. And they use this to do their stories. They can show what they're doing in their stories. They can narrate it. And then eventually they can upload to YouTube, so it can be shared to a lot of different students. And so we always encourage sharing, especially projects that were very successful in our classroom.
As educators, we want to have globally competent students. We want them to recognize perspectives in the following ways: to express their perspective on a situation, event, issue, or even a phenomena that gives relativity to the perspective. Examine the perspective, the people, the group, the schools of thought, identify the influences. We also want them to be able to explain how cultural interaction will influence situations or issues. And being able to articulate these in the differential access to knowledge, technology, and resources will definitely affect the quality of life and success for these students. These audiences will be different. They'll be collaborators over culture, geography, faith, ideology, wealth, and maybe other factors. We want globally competent students who can thoughtfully differentiate among many audiences and adapt their behavior accordingly, working together with diverse teams toward a common goal. This concludes Lesson 4, Field-Based Activity. This is Leah, signing off. We'll see you next time in cyberspace.